Hello and welcome to part 3 of our, frankly, amazing Band of Brothers cast reunion. We're enjoying this so much. Today we're going to carry on talking about filming. In particular, I really want to get into episode 7 because so many people list it as their favourite episode. Peter O'Meara, who played Lieutenant Dyke, what do you remember about filming?
We prepped to run into the town of Foy. There was a lot of anxious tension, preparation. We didn't really know what was going to happen. They were wiring everything to explode. And I remember just walking through, just rehearsing in my head what the moves would be. And then when we were ready to go, everything went hot and it just became, I can't even describe it. It's the closest to combat I should ever hope to be near. I mean, it was electrifying. There was just things exploding everywhere, firing this machine gun. There was just noise, fire. And we just ran around. We think we did it 2 or 3 times. And every time we did it, it was incredible. So just that energy, that surge, that everything that you rehearsed kind of goes out the window because now your actions are quite natural. So just to make it to the haystack, just to give the command, just to avoid the exploding device, and all of that, we're running on raw energy, and that's what's captured in the scene. And Rick and I, stumbling and halfway through on the way down, we get to the haystack, and then everybody falls in, and George Calil is there, and the whole weapons platoon, we get hunkered down, and every time we shot it was just electrified.
Rick Gomez, who played George Lutz, what are your recollections of these scenes?
I got to say one thing to Maddie really quick, dude. It's 20 years ago, whatever it was. I guess it's 20 years, right, guys?
It's 20 now.
Yeah.
So 20 years ago, and so you can reflect over 20 years and go, there's some pretty important things that happen to you just on set. Whereas an actor, you go, oh fuck, that was amazing. I just learned 16 things in 4 seconds, and I think I was around something that's gonna touch people or be a part of the iconography of our lives for a while. And it doesn't happen a ton, but you do have them. You have moments of like, oh shit, that was really good. Somebody just brought God into the room or whatever the fuck that is. I don't even know what it is. The intangible it, right? And I was with Donnie when Spears comes back to relieve Dyke. And when Spears comes into that shot, sitting there in that moment with Donnie and sort of that scene going on, and I'm trying to think who else is in that scene with us. By the hay bale, by the old,
In 7.
It might have been just me, Donnie, and Dyke, right? Anyway, Maddie, you come running through the woods, and there's a bunch of shells go off, and you come through the smoke of this thing. And I remember Donnie and I looking at the end of that, and just like, we were 9 years old. Donnie and I were 9 years old. And we looked at each other, and we just went like, holy shit, we saw that for real. We were there when that just happened. And then I remember watching the show and then watching the shot and go, nobody could get it. Because you had to be there for real. Like, it fucking happened. And I remember feeling like this little kid in this moment. And so the magic of whatever work everybody put into that to get to that space, and the magic of where Tom and Stephen were, and the whole, I think that was who directed that one? It was David Frankel, maybe, right?
David Frankel.
Yeah. So what David was doing, what everybody was doing, all the work that everybody was doing, to be a part of that and have these little shots that you can look back on and go, oh my God, I lived through that moment. I lived through a moment that was a different angle on what everybody else sees. But Maddie, I remember thinking of you in that moment, that it was one of those proud, really deeply proud moments to be an actor, because surrendering to that moment was just fucking fearless, man. And I remember you coming to us and me going like, holy shit. And you kind of gave us this smile like, I'm here. You do that, you do that, you do that. No one's dead. Let's go. And it was in the moment, it was just like, holy shit. Like it's beyond words.
Yes, Peter?
I remember when we shot it, the incredible, through the smoke, Spears comes. It is straight out of a Hollywood movie. And I vividly remembered the moment because it was like, wow, exactly what Rick was saying. Like, oh my God, it just looked incredible. It felt incredible. And when you look at the show, it's still, what a highlight. and to get to be the guy coming through the smoke to the rescue is pretty great, I think, for Matt. So I mean, just me, the performer, there as we shot it was an electric.
Matt Settle, you were playing the hero, of course. Talk us through it.
Well, certainly one of the talisman aspects of acting is you can pick up something that's imbued with so much meaning, and you don't even know until you pick it up, or you can see something happen like that, or you can have a window. It's almost like there's so many portals. It's like you're shooting a film, but you're outside of time in a way. And what Rick was that Rick just talking? That was Rick.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, you got an amazing voice, Rick. Anyway,
do you know what? That moment that Rick's just described so brilliantly, and it was the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen. And this is my fangirl moment. Alina's going to get hers later. But yeah, I completely fell in love with you in that scene. I was mind blown.
Russ McCall, who played Leibgott, go ahead.
Definitely one of the most iconic scenes in the
Yeah.
You know, when everybody talks about favorite episodes, and there's probably two that people really always mention, and mine by far is episode 7, and I think I'm in it for a heartbeat. I mean, I'm not even there, but when I watch it now, 20 years on, I mean, there's just throughout that episode there was iconic moments, and most of them are Maddie and Spears and Lip. I mean, you know, even when Lipton's watching Spears and he's like, and then he came right back, that voiceover, he just ran and came. I mean, it's just, that's the moment for the show. It was really, you know, big icon.
Yeah. Matt, you nailed him, I have to say.
Yeah, I guess I have a natural aloofness, just the way my brain works. That, you know, I remember Rick Gomez and, you know, other people would just say, hey, Spears, where are you? What are you thinking about? What are you doing? You okay? You all right? Yeah. Because I'm off, you know, feeling something intrinsically. So I guess that lended itself to playing the character. I'm sure you all had moments like that where you just kind of zone out in the middle of shooting, and you feel like you're lost in time, so to speak.
Yeah.
You're not. Yeah.
Do you get him? He's a complex man.
Why people do what they do in a given moment is anybody's guess. Let's say Spears knew after a couple of payphone calls with his wife back in England that things weren't going well. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe he felt suicidal. Maybe he was like, you know, he didn't care. He didn't care what happened. Maybe he's like, I feel terrible. Let me do it. You know, who knows what plays in the hearts of men at a given moment? I mean, honestly, my belief now is that everybody's God doing business as everybody, you know, and we're all here having these experiences. We're all kind of God in a collective, creating this tapestry of what is consciousness, you know. So why do we do what we do? I don't know. Why did Spears run across Foy? There's a lot of circumstances. As actors, we try to produce as much as that as we can in the background before we get to the stasis of the scene. We try to create the backstories that will make us believable for an audience and suspend that disbelief and root it in something that's got a vibrational frequency of truth for us, because we wrote that letter to ourselves, or whatever you did to make it real for you so that it's believable for an audience, you know. So I know that I went to Foy and I looked for a place where Spears might have made that run. And it was the only place I could find is it was a lot further than it was on the day. You know, when we shot it, it was a couple of cornfields, you know. When in the town of Foy, it was like a marathon, you know. It's like, so it wouldn't have been as dramatic in real life from what I saw. Now maybe everything had changed. I don't know, but I actually went to the town of Foy. I saw the depressions in the forest. It's probably pretty crazy to be walking around there because they say there were still shells that were unexploded and all of that stuff, but I had to see. So who knows? I mean, and I think a lot of it, you know, characters got thrown under the bus for dramatic effect. And so the actors that portrayed him, at least in regards for that, I've had that happen to me. I've been cut out of films that I got. I was so excited I got a film and I'm on the editing floor. It could be my performance. Maybe you just keep moving forward. You know, if I thought about it, I wouldn't be thinking about the things I should be thinking about. So Yeah, when it's something so epic, yeah, you're going to have regret that that character got thrown under the bus, but we all do our part to serve the overarching theme, which is to honor the men that actually did this, that fought such a great evil in the world. And hopefully we'll get to the day where we don't have to make war movies anymore, ever again.
Peter, we've mentioned you played Lieutenant Dyke, and to make Spears look that good, your character had to suffer, right?
But from the writer's point of view, I think it's sort of difficult. Like, look, all of us would wish that our characters had been discussed or, discovered, or I don't know, what am I saying? That there was more.
Yeah.
There was more for Smoky Warden. There was more for Lieutenant Dyke. There was more for. But in the end, you have to tell it from somebody's point of view, and it's really Winter's, right?
What do you make of what happened, Peter?
Look, I'm going to just read something from the book, because as I prepped to talk to you today, I just took out the book. I haven't read it in a while. But here's a quote from the breaking point, which is, "There's no such thing as getting used to combat," the Army psychiatrist stated in an official report on combat exhaustion. "Each moment of combat imposes a strain so great that men will break down in direct relation to the intensity and duration of their exposure. Psychiatric casualties are as inevitable as gunshot and shrapnel wounds. The general consensus was that a man reached his peak of effectiveness in the first 90 days of combat, that after that his efficiency began to fall off, that he became steadily less valuable thereafter until he was completely useless." So, it's in the book, it's in Stephen Ramsey's book, it's all there. It's the pressures that Dyke folded under are not unique to him. It's happened to other people. And in fact, when I was in Normandy last year, I got to spend some time with some great people from the 82nd Airborne. And one of them, he said to me, what your character does, I've had that actually happen. He was a sergeant. He said, I had a commanding officer who, during an exercise drill, it was a live fire drill, froze, just totally froze. And somebody else had to come in and take over. And he got back eventually, but it's not unusual. It does. In the kind of epic nature of Band of Brothers, I suppose Dyke gets blamed or carries the weight of this. It's much heavier, right? Because in the storytelling, the mistakes that other people made or the faults that other people had are not portrayed, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think what gets lost, I would say, although I understand that there's not much time when you're making a drama, what gets lost is the humanity. So what we did film was we filmed Dyke leaving. There was a voiceover about Lieutenant Dyke leaving. There was a voiceover about his promotion afterwards. I think essentially he's not a bad person. He's not a traitor. He's not, right?
I think you've summed it up, I think, perfectly and eloquently, because apparently you have said that, rightly or wrongly, he has been judged forever by the worst day of his life.
Exactly. That's it.
Woody,
that's it.
Just to bring in you said that he had 2 Bronze Stars, one of them just a few days earlier, and that's not shown. And the fact that he's wounded is not shown either. So what has been dropped of Dyke to make the story that we admittedly all love so much in Band of Brothers, but at what expense for Lieutenant Dyke?
Well, I called Reg Jans, who's the best Baston guide, to check my facts out this afternoon. And Dyke is a casualty, no pun intended, of bad timing. I mean, he had done Normandy, he'd done Market Garden, he earned a first Bronze Star in Uden in Holland for coordinating a patrol under fire in an incident that actually sounds remarkably similar to the Foy action. And then on January the 3rd, which is the same day Wild Bill Garnier and Joe Toy lose their legs, Dyke is decorated with a Bronze Star, a second one, for pulling 3 men out under small arms fire, which was a patrol across the road towards Noville. And by the time the attack comes in on Foy, he's been, as Peter so wonderfully said, he'd been on the line since Normandy, and he was definitely wounded in that attack near the haystack. Clancy Lyle of 3rd Platoon, who's not portrayed in the show, said that he saw the hit go into Dyke's shoulders, so he's physically wounded. And and within a few days of it, he loses command of the company, although only in a promotional way. He gets promoted up to regiment and ends up becoming General Maxwell Taylor's aide-de-camp. So he he had a good career, but it's just that in the process of the show, there's no backstory. You know, Peter comes into the show. There's no, you know, Peter, as he said, there's a narration at the end of saying he went on elsewhere. But when he joins the company, there's no narration saying, and Dyke was a veteran of Normandy and Holland. He's brought in with the audience understanding he's a novice when he isn't. So, and we think it's because they just didn't research him properly, because they believe there were no Dyke family members alive, and they kind of went by the testimonies of people like Lipton and Garnier who didn't like Dyke for whatever reason, and mainly because it's timing. As I said, he comes in, they've lost Winters to the battalion, they've lost Heiliger, and everybody's on short tempers, everybody's knackered and exhausted and fed up, and he comes in and, you know, he could have come in and given them all $100 each personally. They still wouldn't have liked, you know, he's joining a team when they've been playing together as a team for so many weeks and months, and here comes the new kid. And it's very
He's
hard.
on a complete hiding to nothing, isn't he?
Exactly. You know, it's like you know, you're a football girl, Alex. It's like a player coming in to Chelsea from Tottenham. You know, you're hated at the beginning. It doesn't matter how good you are. You're coming in with baggage. I'm not, you know, comparing World War II to football, but Dyke is just a casualty of, he comes in at the wrong time.
Peter, so Dyke died in 1989. So did they believe that there were no family? Have any family come forward since the programme, or is it still that we don't know anything about his descendant?
I remember Scotty, some of the guys would be talking with their real counterparts, and thought, wow, that's amazing, you know, that you have Phil Garnier on the other end of the phone and you can talk to him. There was certainly no line of communication for me. You know, I think about that. I think about his family and what they must feel about the betrayal. I don't think it's entirely fair, but they're just, you know, they're telling a story, and as Woody rightly says, it is a bit slanted as to whose opinion that's not just Dyke, but obviously Sober's, you know. So, I mean, the blessing, even though, yes, I play the guy that nobody likes and all that stuff, it's one of the more memorable, for better or worse, is a memorable moment in the story. And I'm grateful for it. I myth that people think that Dyke died. That's the general, people like, oh, then you died behind the haystack. And like, he didn't die. That's some editing. And I think also the labeling of a coward is just not very helpful. I think in this day and age, you know what I mean? If you really want to talk about people and humanity and understanding, because that's where we're going, right? That's, as we mature, that's where we want to be. We want to have a broader understanding of the real toll of combat. He didn't run away. He just, under the pressure of the moment, didn't know what to do. You know, that's very human. And I know, I mean, okay, Barty, how do you portray that? Like, does everyone go, oh, poor Dyke? No, obviously that's, the mission is the mission. And I think, as Willie has said, he was just a victim of circumstance. He was not the right guy for that particular job on the day. It happens, you know?
And maybe if he'd have been the feature of episode 7, then it would have been portrayed very differently. I mean, it is art, isn't it? It's... Exactly.
Like Mark Warren's character, like that has a much more sort of human touch to it, doesn't it?
And he had his story arc, didn't he? The Blythe had his redemption, didn't he? But Blythe had a visible on-screen redemption of volunteering for a patrol. Whereas Dyke's, not that Dyke needed a redemption, but anything that happened to Dyke was off-screen. So there was no conclusion to it. So Blythe, a similar story, but Blythe has that denouement to it, which is the difference, I think.
When you're meeting people at the signings, I've had one or two women, they automatically think that you're that guy. They go, oh my God, you're just horrified to see Lieutenant Dyke. And I'm laughing because, I mean, what else am I supposed to do? Look, I wasn't there. I'm sorry. It's, you know, but that's the story you carry. You hear that, you know, people just see you through they don't see the actor. They just see what they see, don't they?
To me, though, they're not the ones who matter. It's nice that they show up, but if they don't comprehend it, the people who matter did. Tell us about Dick Winters.
Meeting Winters and him giving me his nod of approval and saying, you did a great job. That moment I will treasure for the rest of my life. It was incredibly moving.
Did that mean more because of the way that you had to portray Dyke as well, to have that from someone who knew him?
Absolutely. I felt incredibly I mean, I was in awe, obviously, in mere meeting Winters. I feel incredibly guilty. I'm sort of feeling shy. Should I say anything? Like, I'm the guy who carries the story of the guy who hurt the company, right? These are the real veterans. They welcomed me. And that was something, you know.
Let's talk again a bit more generally about filming.
How real did it all feel, Ben Caplan, who played Smokey Gordon?
I mean, it was very real, and it was quite a dangerous place to be. You know, obviously they walked us through where explosions were going to be and made sure that, you know, people did get injured. But for me, I sort of just loved the enormity of it, because it just made me think, well, actually, I don't need to worry too much about imagining what this must have been like. I'm kind of living it. And I've said this before to people I've spoken to about Band of Brothers. It was the best history lesson for me as a human being about, you know, the realities of war, in reading the material, in being on those sets and actually reliving the experiences of that many people running around. There were tanks and, you know, mortar explosions going off. And it was a very, very scary and very intense experience. But it meant that you were giving an experience of what it must be like for anybody to go through that situation. And again, I think that's shown in the performances that, you know, you just feel like those guys are really going through what they went through. And that authenticity and that detail just helped our job as actors.
Philip Barantini, you played Skinny Sisk.
Whenever there was explosions or gunfire, that was all, you know. Nowadays, when you have like a gun on set and it's fired, usually you can either fire blanks still, but usually they don't use blanks. They just use it's like a, I don't know what it is, but it's like an air pistol sort of thing. It doesn't really make a sound, and then they put the sound effect in later. But with the weapons that we had, the M1 rifles, they were real. They were discontinued actual World War II M1 rifles that we were using. So they made the noise, the exact sound. You know, the only thing that was different was the sort of kickback on the gun didn't happen, so you had to fake that. But the rest of it was completely real. I mean, explosions and everything that's going on around you. You know, it's so high, the adrenaline is so high that, you know, you've got a set piece to do where you have to run from one end of the street to the other, or to go in a building and take a building out and do that kind of thing. And, you know, you rehearse it. And when it comes to actually filming it, it's like literally like you're about to go to war. You're like, the energy is so high. So it felt completely real. Like, you know, obviously, you know, you're not in too much danger because of the health and safety aspect, but anything could go wrong.
Yes, Rene Moreno, who played Joseph Ramirez.
We felt safe with everybody in charge. Yeah, however, we knew that we could hurt ourselves really easily if we didn't pay attention. You know, we had to listen. Yeah. And we had to make sure we followed our marks, especially when we knew where the mortars were. And then they said, okay, we're going to shoot the scene in 5, 4. And they took out the markers and we're like, holy shit, where are the mortars? Holy crap. And we're running through this field and things are going off on, you know. But we had to really pay attention. Yeah.
Tim Matthews, who played Alex McCall.
I don't know how anyone else feels about this, but I remember the very first time there was any kind of firefight at boot camp, and I think maybe it was that one we'd done a night maneuver. We'd marched throughout the night. We didn't know where we were going, how long it was going to take.
Thursday night.
Nobody knew where we were going.
Nobody knew.
What a big firefight. Right. In the pitch dark, I nearly pissed my pants. I'm not exaggerating. There was a very genuine feeling of terror that I had. It was really primal, and it wasn't, you know, I could rationalise it away, and I knew that there were blanks, and I knew that I was in no danger, but fuck me.
And Rick Warden, who played Harry Welsh. Go ahead.
Yeah, but how near were you to Matt Settle, man? Settle emptied 2 flipping clips on his Tommy gun in that.
We'd all been trained not to put
a night attack alone.
Anyone's faces, and everyone forgot that, because I swear to God, I'd nearly lost an eye and an eardrum and God knows what else. But yeah, that's frightening.
I really do need to say that episode 9 has had a huge effect on my life. It's why I've become a concentration camp historian. It's really moved me, but what I saw, I didn't want that to happen to other people, for it to be forgotten. And Ross in particular, your performance was so influential. I need to know, how did you prepare for the scenes at the camp?
Good question.
So we knew episode 9 was coming, and we knew what it was going to entail. And I think most of the boys will say this in certain episodes where they had more to do in. So certainly like 8, 9, and 10 were pretty heavy for the lead up. And so I knew that they were coming up. And I knew what 9 was going to be about. And we didn't really get the scripts that early in advance. But if you were heavily involved in a particular episode, at some point would take you to one side and sneak something or talk to you about something. So I knew it was coming up. I also knew it was going to be really German heavy. And I don't speak German. And so I knew that I had this big, various speeches in German that I had to learn with the dialect and the translate. And then there were discussions about whether or not I should go to one of the camps beforehand, like on a weekend to go and have a look at Dachau or Landsberg. There was only one left of the 7. And after a lot of thought, I decided again, because I wanted to relay how it would have felt for the guy seeing this thing for the first time. We wanted to capture that on camera. So we knew that they were building the set. It was close by to base camp, but it was still, in the middle of the woods. But we all chose not to see it until the camera started rolling. And so we knew that they were building it. We knew what was coming. I remember reading the script and being really, really affected by the script, like everybody was. And the show was a show, but it was a real bond between us all. So there was a lot of laughs. We had a lot of good times. And when 9 came around, everybody just sat in it a little bit more. Because, these guys didn't know what they were going to walk into. Nobody knew about the concentration camps. The higher ups did, but the grunt soldiers themselves, nobody knew what it entailed. And if you ever spoke to any of the vets, they're all they kept it in their chest a little. They wouldn't really divulge much information. So it was all your own research, really, to get us to that place. And I remember the night before the camp, I had learned the German that I needed to learn. And I got a phone call from the producers and the translator saying, "We've got it wrong. We've given you the wrong dialogue. It's not right." And I was like, "We shoot this tomorrow." And they're like, "Yeah, I know. And this is the correct dialogue." So we learn this whole speech. So as an actor, there's a part of you trying to remember your lines, going, "I got to go and do this thing." But also as a human being, you convey what that was going to be like, seeing something that nobody had any idea what it was. So there's that great scene with my, Paul, and I think Christensen, and I think Perko was there. I can't remember, there's a few others remembering. They walk out of the woods and they actually see the camp for the first time, but the audience don't see it. And I remember all of us just having that reaction when we saw this thing. It was incredible. The director was Franco again, so he's the same guy here. And David had family in the Holocaust, so it was really important to him to get it right.
Philip, talk to us about arriving on set.
The way we arrived on the set was we were all put onto the trucks and we were driven there. And there was cameras on. There was a bunch of cameras, some on the trucks with us, and some sort of hidden in places that I didn't know. Nobody knew where they were.
Ross, how did you feel?
And I remember us all just showing up and seeing this pure devastation. And like everything else in the show, they handled it with such authority and such respect, but also just such brilliant detail. So, the smoke that you see, they had a lot of very frail folks there, being our background actors. They added some body makeup to some of them. They did a little bit of green screen with some of them. Some of them were animatronics. And of course, there was just like an abundance of bodies and mass graves. So it was a very, very strange thing to walk in. So, asking how did I get there? It was very easy just by looking at it. Seriously, like just by watching what these actors were bringing, what the script was bringing, the mood on the set was pretty dense. And so to get into that mindset, you can imagine what it would be like for somebody to come across this for the first time. Now, add on top that Joe was a Jew, and add on top that, he had German family in his blood. I just found this incredible juxtaposition of this, American soldier who speaks German, who is Jewish, who's finding out for the first time that his people have been persecuted. And, but that was all in the writing. So seriously, it was about showing up, and everybody just was affected by it the way that you see.
I know that we wanted to send this round the room as well. If any of the others, because Alina wants to know, like, what was the feeling? Because it's a brave thing to do, not to let yourself see it before you started shooting it, but it must have been harrowing.
Philip, it was a little bit overwhelming, wasn't it?
And it was our initial first reaction of seeing the camp that they built. And it was just like, I can't explain really. You sort of, you forget that you're acting, and you forget that you're in a movie, and you forget that these people who are playing, these victims are actors as well, because they were so realistic, and it was so well done. The emotion was real that we felt. Certainly for me anyway, it was heartbreaking. And a lot of us had to sort of, once we cut the cameras, and that was we knew what we were coming into. Now it was, a lot of us had to go away and just sort of process what we just seen, and also remember that it's a film, we're filming, and it's not real, but also remember like that the horrific things that did happen for real. That was definitely weighing heavy on me personally during that whole segment. It was really tough.
Yes, Robin Laing, who played Babe Heffron.
It was, yeah. It was really somber. I remember vividly. It was really somber period, because by that time we'd been together for a long time, and not only were we working together all week, we were all going out at the weekends and partying together and eating together, and we were spending all of our time together. So we were close, and we were having a lot of fun. We were all young, and it was a really happy set, despite the subject matter. But I remember that period being really quite somber and I guess respectful, because it was a really stark set. And those extras and the animatronics, and it was very respectful and kind of restrained, and I think a lot of people were quite kind of reflective and ruminative over that, over that, while we shot those sequences. I think today's the liberation of Portraying, isn't it? It is. I think today is the anniversary of. I think it's the end of April anyway.
Yeah, it would be.
Portraying, the one that Easy Company helped to liberate. Easy Company didn't arrive for a couple of days afterwards, but I think today's the day. That just occurred to me.
The first time that I actually went to Landsberg wasn't until probably 18 years later. And like I said, I think there was 7 different camps in Landsberg. Only 2 are surviving. Germans got rid of the others, but I remember going there and just having that really surreal moment of, wow, we really got this correct.
Yeah.
So how they depicted it on the screen was like everything else that they did. I mean, in Hollywood, we tweaks have to be made for entertainment purposes, but also for time slots. But on this show, they were pretty damn good at keeping everything pretty much on key. This is why.
Rick Warden, go on.
Yeah, I remember it very like Ross is describing, actually. Very peculiar, because I was in one of the trucks, and just exactly as Ross has said, we'd had the opportunity, we'd turned down the opportunity to see any of the set. So I can't remember how many, it's all a fog of how many days we were actually there for, guys. But I do remember driving along in a truck and thinking, I don't know what we're going to see. I know what we're going to see in a macro sense, but actually micro-wise, I don't know what it looks like. And then just pitching up. I just remember it being very quiet there, incredibly quiet. And then, as Ross says, lots and lots of extras. And I don't know whether they must have been primed beforehand. That whole sequence of giving out the food at the gates, and when the gates were opened, and yeah, it was. Yeah, I think I need to pass from there.
Yeah.
Someone did my.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much, because you guys, all of you, had some sort of input into who I am today. So, especially Ross with the scenes.
Alina,
So
that's so sweet, darling. Thank you very much.
Paul Woodage, our Bobfest coordinator. Go ahead.
One of the actors was convinced he could smell. He remembered there being a smell being pumped through of, like, death or something, and the other said no, that there was no smell. He convinced himself it was so real.
Yeah,
he managed to add a smell to his memory that wasn't there.
Yeah,
because they can't have pumped smell out. That would be ridiculous.
No, I mean, I know they have these they're like gas, what do you call them? Like it's like a smoke machine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's to create, like, atmos in the air sort of thing. And I know that they had a lot of them around, so there was like smoke going through and stuff like that. But and then you have a distinctive smell, but certainly don't smell of death. So yeah, that's a lot of actors have their own process and their own way that they work. And there was a lot of actors on Band of Brothers that were fairly method. The method technique is basically you become that character and you believe 100% that you are that person. So I can believe that that certain people would have that it would have that effect on them, and you would believe that you could smell it.
This episode, perhaps more than any other, relies on artistic license. How did the veterans feel? Scott Grimes, who played Don Malarkey.
No shit. This is who Don Malarkey was as a human being. As I expected, at least, when he saw the whole series, to maybe a compliment. Not that I wanted it, but maybe, he goes, "Thank you," whatever. The first thing Don Malarkey said to me when he saw the series is, "I was not at that concentration camp, and I'm very upset that you were there." And that's he wasn't there. And there's one small scene in episode 9 of me walking through and with the handkerchief over my mouth, and Don Malarkey never said great work. He said, "I'm very upset," because that's a huge thing for those guys that liberated that camp. And he said, "I wasn't there. I had the flu," and I felt really bad because it was too late by then.
Yes, Jimmy Madio, who played Frank Ponte.
When episode 9 came and I first read that script, that was the first time I went, oh my God, after all this time been working, Frank's got some stuff in here. This is great. And I'm reading it and I'm just thinking concentration camps, he's running to find winters, single family, like all this stuff, and this replacement O'Keefe. And I called Frank right away and I was like, "Frank, here's what's going on. This is what's going on with the with the show." And Frank said the same thing. He was like, "No, I didn't find the concentration camps. I was still, I didn't single-handedly find them. I didn't run back to HQ. I didn't do any of that." Meanwhile, I've been reporting back to the producers all the time, like, well, Frank was really crazy about hygiene, and that's why he did the toothbrush and the hair, the scissors, all that shit. So they were like listening to what I was saying, the production. Same thing with what Speight said about Muck going back, and they would add it in if it worked. And I remember going back to them, and this is actors kind of, you don't do this, but at the same time, you didn't want to fuck it up so bad. Like, you didn't want to swing and miss and be smoking a cigarette, and then your veteran never touched a cigarette in his life, and throughout the series you have a cigarette in your mouth, and he's got to watch this thing and look like, oh man, that sucks. Like, this kid is playing me. I never touched him. I was against him. I lost a family member smoking. Anyway, so when that episode, I went to Franco was doing 9, and I was like, David, I spoke with Frank Picanti. He never ran back to HQ and did all this, and he never did that. I said, I'm just telling you what it was. I don't know if it's going to change. I don't know what needs to happen. But Frank didn't single-handedly find the concentration camps. And it was just sort of creative license. It's like, hey, man, here's what it is. It's a little too late. It is what it is. And Frank was very easygoing, you know, and he was like, oh, yeah, it is what it is. And he brushed it off. He didn't really, you know, think much about it. You know, Malarkey wore a lot on his sleeve. So he was verbal about it. Frank was more like, nah, I don't, you know, it is what it is. But you know,
we spoke to John Orlov, actually, and he was saying that the guys wouldn't talk about it. So that one, more than any of them, is creative license. He said, I think it's 2 paragraphs in the book because I don't remember that. I don't want to talk about that. And so he literally had to go from nothing to craft that episode. He was told, this is your time span and it has to have the concentration camp in it. Go make it happen. And that was basically, he had 2 paragraphs to work on. Scott, when you look at the character arcs over the show, Malarkey is possibly the soldier who changes the most, from happy-go-lucky at Toccoa to a kind of jaded combat veteran you see at the end. How much of that change was in the script, and how much did you bring it as an actor?
I got really lucky, and here's why. I got really...
Sorry.
Oh, I got really lucky because, one, it was written from before I even went to boot camp. I saw this thing, you know, on the page. And then 2, my episodes that I did that Malarkey had to go through what he went through came at the fucking time where I personally, Scott Grimes, was hating this and wanted to go home, just like maybe he wanted to go home. And also, you know, when he loses, when Muck and Piccala, that they left. Tim and Richard weren't there filming for a while, so I was lonely, and it all just kind of worked out, luckily for me, because I mean, I could sit here and tell you, yes, I went and did so much research and went into myself and stuff. No, it just luckily.
That was the last episode that was shot, though, as well, wasn't it? 8 is the one where I think you're talking about. Is 8
exactly
is really
right.
And it must have been, these guys have been away from home for 10, 11 months. You know what I mean? It's like, for us, we all got to go home to every night to our own beds and stuff like that, which is, but it's that, I don't know. I mean, just keying into what you're saying is like, it must have been so near, but so far away still. And
yeah. So when I did that, like in episode 8, when I did that shower scene, it's just me in the shower. I was fucking miserable, man. I mean, it was
best
cold.
scene in the show, man. Best scene in the show.
I'll do it right now, man.
Stop it! Any chance he gets.
Yeah.
Ross, go on.
Oh, so,
I don't know if you remember this or not, Scott. Scotty, you said something to me, and I don't know if you remember or not, but it was when we were watching the episodes kind of line up, because we shot episode 8 last. And I always remember you turning around and saying, man, I sort of wish we had known exactly where the scripts were going to go, because there was a difference in our arcs. And it's true, like you and I in 9 and 10 are very different to how we are in 8. Because we shot 9, 10, then went back and did 6, 7, 8. And by that time we got to 8, we were like weary and war-torn and all that jazz. And 9 and 10, we were still kind of in a different mindset. And that was always interesting to me to hear that from you, because I agreed with you.
Episode 10, Scott, the location got your seal of approval, didn't it?
Dudes, I mean, making 10 in Interlaken, Switzerland was just like a gift. That was like,
came on the train, Scotty. You came on the train. I remember coming again.
It's a perfect kind of where we were as brothers, having spent all this, time together. I fell asleep and missed the plane. And so I got on a train with my buddy who was just visiting from the States. And I took this gorgeous train for hours and hours. And I get off in Interlaken at like 10 p.m. at night. I remember it looked like this little, exactly what I would expect this little town to look like. And I get off and I look to my right, I look to my left, and I say, okay, I guess I'll go to the left. And I'm going down this street, exhausted, just trying to get to the hotel. And Ross comes out of this bar. You remember this, buddy? You come out of this bar, Scotty, we're in a fight with these dudes. Come on. Are you fucking kidding me? But I said, are you kidding me in my head? But then I went, fuck it. I got to do it. It never ended up happening. We didn't end up fighting anybody. But I was like, I'm not a fighter. But now Ross is telling me, help me. We need your help. I'm like, fuck yeah, man. I'm going to help my brothers, man.
Dale Dye did that, though, as much as you all hated his guts in boot camp. That's down to Dale Dye.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Peter Youngblood-Hills, who played Shifty Powers, what's your fondest memory on set?
Can I just say that the one thing I remember with Matthew was he would, I think it was with Ian Bailey, they were singing this song, "Pardon Me Boy, is that the Chattanooga Choo Choo?"
That was then Scott.
Track 29.
We weren't allowed to put it in the show.
Well, that was it.
It's racist.
And I remember that. It was like one of the most beautiful moments, beautiful things. I've got this. I'm living with a 92-year-old woman at this moment, and we're thinking about a song. I'm not.
Isn't she a cougar?
You might need to clarify this, Peter. Some
She's my
smutty minds at work.
She's my landlady. My landlady.
Yeah.
And it was anyway. It was the song that we were singing together last night, and I was thinking I was
searching a lot of that stuff, wasn't he? As I remember it, Matt had a load of those.
He's a wonderful singer.
Tim?
I remember Scott Grimes singing it. That's what I remember. So forgive me, Matthew, if it was you. But I remember Scott suggesting that he, Richard, and I do it because we were in the mortar squad, and we do it like a little barber shop trio, not a quartet, obviously. And we weren't allowed to because it's racist.
When I heard you, that was after boot camp. I think it was after.
Rick Warden?
Yeah, Matt. I remember you having it in Austria, in Switzerland, Matt, having that music on a loop.
You were singing it with a group. You were doing a barbershop kind of thing.
Matt, yes.
And Tim, you remember Scotty Grimes singing it, right? So
I remember.
We have to get to the bottom of this. Was alcohol involved?
No.
I remember Matthew
Honestly,
singing.
it was on set. Scott, Richard, and I were singing it. I remember that.
But Matt, you had a sort of playlist of that stuff, didn't you, during that year?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I grew up singing a lot of that stuff. And
Peter?
I don't think maybe Bailey wasn't singing it because I don't know if Bailey can sing, but I know you were singing and you could sing, and I was like, that's what I want to hear.
These are entirely separate memories and entirely separate stories.
Maybe they're separate memories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on, Matt.
Hey Tim, did you ever get to hear Babe Heffron sing with some of the other vets? They would sing like "Mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy." You guys remember that?
No.
Yep.
Hey, pardon me, boys, but do you want to sing that song now? Pardon me, boys, is that the Chattanooga Choo Choo? Come on, everybody, 1, 2. Track 29.
You
can give me a shine.
That's the line.
Can you afford to board the Chattanooga Choo Choo? I've got my fare. And just a trifle to spare. You leave that Pennsylvania station for read a magazine and then you're in Baltimore. Dinner in the diner. Nothing could be finer than to have your ham and eggs in Carolina. All right, that's enough. And let's keep going.
You're
I
muted,
missed all of it.
Alex.
I had no idea. This is awesome. Is it really 20 years? Is it?
Yeah.
20 years, Matt.
20 years.
20 years indeed. That's it for today. Join us tomorrow when we will be talking about the responsibility that the guys felt in playing real people, and we'll also be talking to them about their relationships with the veterans that they played, and the veterans that were friends with the men that they played. Bring a box of tissues because you will cry. We all have. Until then, don't forget you can become a patron of History Hack for as little as $1 a month. You just have to go to www.historyhack.podbean.com. We would muchly appreciate it. We would love to keep going in the aftermath of the coronavirus crisis. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @hack_history, and it's the same ID on Instagram as well. There now follows a public service announcement.
I'm Horatio Hornblower. And I'm Archie Kennedy. The simplest gift you can give in these troubled times is to obey orders. Indeed. The regulations are very clear in the matter.
It is the duty of all of us to remain at anchor until the little people in the talking box signal you otherwise.
You don't want to end up getting flogged.
Good day to you.
Good day to you both.